Hey there everyone, Aaron here from Push Square, the channel where I talk all things PlayStation. And yeah, we've got a tough one to get through today. Sony, if you didn't hear, has announced that it is ceasing the production of physical disc-based media starting January 2028. But it's pretty much confirming that the PlayStation 6 is going all in on digital. So today I want to break down how we got here, to be honest. Some of the worries that I and many other people have, and what I think it means for the future of PlayStation, or at least what I kind of hope it means. So let's start off with the why. I think most of us can agree that while this is a really shocking announcement, it's not surprising. Surprising maybe that it happened as soon as it did, but the fact that it did happen was kind of inevitable, I think, anyway. That's because a lot of you will have heard the number that's been going around, the talk of 85% of players buying their games digitally over physical. And this is something that has been worked rather rapidly towards across the last 2 generations. It's why we saw Xbox with their digital-only console with the Xbox One generation. It's why the PlayStation itself has a digital-only version. And I actually don't think that Sony's just looking at the sales data of the games itself. It's looking at what its users are buying. Are they buying the digital over the disc-based version? How many people are buying the disc drive edition on its own? And how many people are buying devices like the PlayStation Portal, which is an entirely digital cloud streaming and remote play based device? All of this data will be going towards what I ultimately think, as sad as it is a pretty cut and dry business numbers led decision. If we're talking about it really practically for a moment, Sony is selling its games and selling a lot of them, but 15% of those games are being sold at more of a loss because it's actually costing them money to get them in the hands of its gamers. Think about it real practically for a minute. They're having to buy a factory, employ people, buy in materials to then print discs in correlation with the developers, so the data is on the discs, and then having to print sleeves and stuff that goes on the inside of the box. They're then having to work with retailers and delivery companies to ensure that their game is being distributed across the world. And we know this has become less and less of a thing as well, with Jason Schreier recently talking about this on his YouTube channel, which I actually think is really good. You should check it out. But he spoke about the death of E3, how this started out as a way for developers to talk with retailers to discuss how many units they needed to buy, how much advertisement, standees, where would they place the game behind the cash registers. But this steadily became less and less of a necessity because more and more people went towards digital games. So from that standpoint, I kind of understand why Sony would look at this and make the decision to step away from physical games. I think as well, when we look to gamers, like why are gamers buying digital? And really it's kind of just similar to the streaming over, buying physical media. It's the ease of access, isn't it? The fact of the matter is most disc-based games now are basically just access keys, so you're still having to download stuff, whereas if you're buying something digitally, you have access to it from the moment it goes live. I think as well, from like a gamer's standpoint, it has steadily become a bit harder to get games physically, and there's been more hurdles or less reason to really buy in that format. Actually buying the games themselves, way less places are actually selling games. When I was a kid, there was 4 supermarkets, 3 dedicated gaming stores, and I could rent games from my library and a Blockbusters. There were so many options for me when I was a kid to physically go into store, and nowadays there are only one of the 4 retailers, supermarkets, are selling games in just a tiny little selection. Those dedicated gaming stores are now just one that's stuffed in the back of a sports shop and a second-hand place called CEX. So actually going into town has become a lot harder to buy the games that I'm looking for, but then you can also buy them through places like Amazon. But if you're buying a new game, you're relying on a delivery driver. Like I'm saying, I've been burnt plenty of times where I've taken time off of work to play a game, and then the game doesn't turn up till the next day. And of course, like I mentioned, the games themselves, quite often the discs are just access keys, so you're getting it and you're still having to download stuff. So it's just been steadily this case of like, why would you buy physical? I know for a lot of people it seems like a really obvious thing where you say, but it's about actually owning the game, seeing the stuff on your shelf. And I ideal world, would love to agree with you and say that that's something that like I aspire to. I mean, I have a collection of just here, like, this is a mess. Just like a bunch of stuff like PS4 games, PS3 games, PS2 games. But I'm not going to lie to you. I do not own a physical PS5 game. So yeah, like it's kind of one of those things where Sony has followed the numbers and they always say vote with your wallet. And to be honest, the general populace kind of has, even though I'm someone that thinks it's a bad thing. You know, I'm part of the problem, admittedly. Maybe my circumstances are a little skewed because I get a lot of review codes which are digital only. But even still, like I'm not seeing the incentive to buy them physically, to be honest. Now, that's not to say that I agree with this stopping. I really, really don't, because I think ultimately this just works out as a bad thing for games. Like I've said with streaming, you know, there's an element to my life now that's gone that I used to love. Like me and my family would all go to Blockbusters. We'd spend like an hour in there trying to find a movie. Now it's just like sitting mindlessly scrolling on Netflix looking for something, you know? It felt like an event in itself choosing the movie before, and that's something that's now just not a part of modern day life. And I think that's really sad. And I think there's elements of that will now be missing from games, like, you know, sharing your game with a friend. Me and my friends, when I was a teenager, used to go into the town all the time just to look at the games, see what deals were on, what stuff you could get secondhand. And it's steadily just become something that's less and less a part of our lives, which I think is just quite sad. But obviously one of the big worries for a lot of people is the fact that, are we going to own these games forever? Is this actually ownership? Sony recently just removed a bunch of movies from Sony Picture Core, regardless of the fact that you paid for them. So what would stop them from doing something similar down the line with the PlayStation 6 or the 7? And I don't think this is something that needs to be immediately concerned about, you know, when we're looking to the PlayStation 6 generation. But this is a choice, a decision in business that I think is going to have huge effects in the next decade or 2 decades. I have a PS3 sitting somewhere in this house, and I know I can plug it in. I can take the disc for Infamous here, plug it in, and just play that game. But if you're on the PlayStation 8 and you fancy playing a PS6 game, and you dig out your PS6, but the store's shut, or these things aren't, you've had the ownership removed. It's not as simple, and that's the worry of how consumer friendly Sony's going to be moving forward with these other generations. And of course, it's completely eradicating the second-hand market as well, which is a really hard thing to hear when gaming is becoming so expensive. We are essentially being forced into a monopoly with Sony, where they are going to be the primary place to buy your games. You can buy them from their store at the prices they set. And while I think you'll still be able to buy boxes actually from retailers, it's going to be disc only. And like already we've seen this shift to digital, I think eventually people are just going to say, why am I going through the hassle of buying a box that has to be shipped to me to get a code to then have to download the game anyway? I think eventually, if that's how things are going with, buying it from other retailers physically, it's just going to phase out as well. So then when that happens, again, you're back to Sony setting the prices. And when you compare it to something like Steam, which has a really great refund policy, they have sales that are so heavily discounted that quite a lot of the time, I just pick up games on Steam because I'm like, oh, well, that's like £2. Yeah, I'll check that out. I even saw something like Dead Space for $4.99 during the summer sale. And even though I've got it on PlayStation, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I could play it on this other platform for such a low price. And I just don't think PlayStation hits that level yet when it comes to its sales. A lot of the time as well, physical media, if you're buying it through somewhere like Amazon or secondhand, you can get it for much cheaper. And the fact of the matter is you can buy it and then trade it in to put towards your next purchase. All of that is going to disappear as we go into a digital only landscape, which again, like it's that thing of, yes, it's inevitable. Yes, we have kind of done this to ourselves in a way where many of us, including myself, have went fully digital, but ultimately it's just working towards a future that isn't really consumer friendly. So what does this mean for the future of PlayStation? I mean, I know a lot of people are annoyed about this, and there's very vocal outreach at the moment to reverse this decision. But I think Sony's going to be looking at this and thinking, right, so this is affecting 15% of like we are saying, if we're taking that as gospel, the fact that 85% of people are buying them digitally, they're probably thinking, right, 15% are going to be angry about this, but they're going to fold on it anyway. They're going to have to accept. And the thing is, as well, they've got the data to back it up, because places like Steam, like PC gaming, has been digital for years. And I don't say this as like I agree with these things or blah, blah, but it's kind of just the way that they are now, which is sad. It is sad, but yeah, like it's almost like hard to argue with the logic, because in a way you're asking a company to front the bill for something that most of us ignore anyway. The money is the thing that they follow, and if the money's not being supplied, then why bother with it at all, and that's sad. My silver lining, or like my hope for the future of PlayStation, is that the PlayStation Store becomes more of a place like Steam, where it's more just a rolling like influx of games rather than a generational divide. We've kind of seen this already. Like, we can still buy PS4 games on the PlayStation 5. I'm hoping that by the time we're at the PlayStation 8, you'll still just be able to buy a game from 2020 as opposed to 2040 something, like there's still going to be able to buy from the PS4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and onwards generations as we move forward. If, we're still looking at like a traditional console by that point. Obviously that's future speculation stuff. But yeah, that's my hope for the future of PlayStation. If they're moving in this direction, they have to become more consumer friendly. And when it comes to like our rights, like the ownership, I don't know. Like, I don't have the brains to really to pick it apart in a way that feels right. It does just feel like we're moving towards some kind of dystopian form of consumption, but it's something that's been set in motion for such a long time, and we're seeing it in more places than just games. And I think it's really sad. And even though I think what makes it sadder is knowing that I'm a part of the problem. So yeah, games. It's been quite the era. Quite the era we've been seeping in here. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. How does this make you feel about buying a future console? Is it are you going to write it off then? But then what does that mean? Like, realistically, if you're someone that's saying like, I'm not buying the PlayStation 6 because it doesn't support physical media, where are you going for that? Are you just done with games, or are you turning to another place that, as of right now, is still doing it? I mean, I'm saying this, I still think places like Nintendo and Xbox, they're going to go digital eventually. I do think that. I think Sony has almost been the unfortunate first one. I mean, I think if Xbox announced it first, that they would be dead in the water by this point. But yeah, this is going to be a real reputational hit, but at the same time I see it as something that like was inevitable, as much as I hate it. But let me know what you're thinking about it. Sorry for the doom and gloom. Yeah, comment, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.